Hello fellow Clear Mind enjoyers. How are you guys doing? Thanks to everyone who participated in the poll. The people have spoken and I'm showing you the pure Synchron deck with full support now. I'm also planning on releasing a Elf Note version which I personally also like very much. Not gonna lie, this year's reveals have been absolutely insane for us. At the time of writing this script, we've received the new Elf Note support, and it's huge. Not only does it improve Regina as a disruption tool, but it also solves the Nibiru problem that the Synchron version had in the TCG. This basically means that Elf Notes and its variants now have insane turn 0 disruption, arguably some of the best among current decks. On top of that, we got Fidrawless Harmonia. This card is a very strong hand trap for Synchro decks. It's difficult to interact with since most common protection tools don't work against it, and it often acts as a 1-for-2 disruption that also leaves a body on the field. While a level 7 tuner isn't always ideal for Synchrons, we can definitely make good use of it in many situations. Another important card is Synchro Emergency. Funny turn 0 FTK potential aside, this card is a bit tricky to build around because it requires non-tuners, something Synchrons don't naturally have in abundance. Still, the card is so powerful that it's worth building around, especially since it helps fix one of the deck's biggest weaknesses, going second. The third major addition is Star Junk Synchron. At first, I thought this card was kind of mid, but it actually solves a lot of awkward situations. It helps make weaker starters Nibiru-proof and adds a ton of resilience and reduces redundancy to the deck. These are the three main cards that completely change how we build the deck and route our combos. So without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Let's start with the Synchron core. We are running 2 Stardust Synchron, 1 Junk Synchron, 1 Star Junk Synchron, 1 Assault Synchron, and 1 Scrap Synchron. We also play Wheel Synchron, but I consider him more of a Synchro emergency card rather than part of the core speeder engine. The combos still work without him. I'll go into more detail once we talk about Synchro Emergency later. Stardust Synchron is currently our only real Synchron starter. The problem is that he's not a great one, since he usually forces us to go through Junk Signal, which we'd rather keep for protection. At least he doesn't lose to Nibiru anymore, but it's still not ideal. We run him at 2 because we want to use him once before Speeder, to access Zaran together with Scrap Warrior, and once after Speeder as a level for tuner body. Next is the mandatory Junk Synchron. You might wonder why we only run 1 copy. While he can be a Garnet, drawing him alongside another starter is usually fine, since we can often skip Synchro Fellows thanks to Star Junk Synchron, which fixes that issue. Star Junk Synchron is basically Junk Synchron, but better. In hand, he can target a level 2 monster in the graveyard and special summon both. In the graveyard, he can banish himself. This might seem irrelevant at first, but it actually comes up for Dispay to revival lines. Assault Synchron does his usual job here, extending plays and enabling recursion, while Scrap Synchron is mostly an engine requirement. Assault can special summon itself and revive a tribute or banished Synchro Dragon, and Scrap Synchron can be used from hand to summon Warrior Synchros while also protecting cards that mention Junk Warrior from destruction, which surprisingly comes up quite often. Now let's look at the supporting non-tuners. We run 3 Junk Meister, 1 Junk Armor, 1 Assault Sonic Warrior, and 1 Full Speed Warrior. Junk Meister is easily our best starter. By revealing a warrior monster or a Stardust Synchro from the extra deck, he can special summon himself and then search any junk card, including Junk Synchron, Star Junk Synchron, and Junk Signal. His main search target, however, is Junk Armor. On top of that, he can reduce the level of any junk monster on the field by up to 2, which is extremely useful for combo lines. Junk Armor can special summon itself when added to the hand, and then uses a Lone Fire Blossom-like effect to tribute itself and summon any Synchron monster from the deck. This makes him an incredibly strong bridge piece for the engine. Assault Sonic Warrior is one of the best support cards we've received. It enables the emergency teleport engine for the deck. If we control a card that mentions Assault Mode Activate or Junk Warrior, we can special summon it, and on summon it searches any Synchron monster. If used as synchro material, it also gives all our monsters a 500 ATK boost, but more importantly, it chain blocks Junk Speeder, which is huge. Finally, we have Full Speed Warrior, and honestly, this is still my least favorite card from the recent support. It feels like it came straight out of 2008. On summon, it searches a spell or trap that mentions Junk Warrior or Junk Synchron directly, and during the battle phase it increases the attack of all monster that mention Junk Warrior or Junk Warrior itself by 900. Overall, it's pretty mid, but we still play it because the line it enables is decent. Even if it's not something we actively want to open. To increase consistency and effectively add more copies of Junk Meister, we run Reinforcement of the Army. While it can search multiple cards in the deck, its primary target is almost always Junk Meister. Now let's talk about the supporting spells. We are running 2 Junk Signal and 1 Synchro Fellowship. Junk Signal is a very interesting card with 2 strong effects. The first allows us to tribute a monster on the field to special summon a monster that mentions Stardust Dragon or Junk Warrior, which makes it a great extender. The second effect lets us negate a card or effect that chains to one of our Synchro monsters, giving us an additional layer of protection. Overall, it's just a very solid and flexible card. Synchro Fellowship, on the other hand, isn't as impressive in terms of card quality. While it technically searches 2 cards, one of them is always Junk Synchron, which limits flexibility a bit. The second card is more open and it changes based on the game state. In the graveyard, it can banish itself to target a Synchro monster, reduce its level by 1, and grant us an additional normal summon for a Synchron monster, which is where most of its value comes from. To improve our starter quality and extension, we also run 3 Emergency Teleport with 1 Psi-Reflector. Psi-Reflector essentially searches Assault Sonic Warrior, which we can then special summon to start our combo without using our normal summon when opening with Emergency Teleport. On top of that, Psi-Reflector is also a solid normal summon on its own, which gives the engine even more flexibility. For going second power, we include 3 Synchro Emergency and 3 Fidrawless Harmonia. Fidrawless Harmonia is basically Ghost Ogre on steroids. It reveals itself along with up to 5 Synchro monsters from the extra deck to special summon itself, then non-targeting destroys a monster and sends a Synchro from the extra deck to the graveyard. Great targets for this are cards like Malong, Packbit, and Win Pegasus, making it both disruption and setup at the same time. Synchro Emergency is where things get a bit tricky. It's an incredibly powerful card, but it forces us to build the deck differently. The main issue with traditional Synchrons is the lack of non-tuners we can special summon from hand to pair with the tuner it summons from the deck. To fix this, different approaches have emerged. The first approach tries to increasing ratios of Full Speed Warrior and Assault Sonic Warrior. Usually going for 2 to 3 Full Speed Warrior and 2 to 3 Assault Sonic Warrior is the way. What you put to 3 and what to 2 is up to your preference. This approach also adds more hand traps like Fuwalos and Purulia, because they are non-tuner level 4 bodies. The goal is to aim for around 14 valid pair targets to reach roughly an 85% consistency rate for turn 0 plays with Emergency. However, this approach comes with downsides. It restricts the non-engine slots, and cards like Fuwalos and Purulia ideally want to be used before Synchro Emergency. It can also become awkward if you don't naturally draw proper pairs, forcing inefficient plays. Because of these issues, some players choose to not run Synchro Emergency at all as an approach, which I personally don't agree with, since the card is just too strong to ignore. The solution I currently prefer is running Wheel Synchron. He allows level 1 tuners as non-tuners and level 2 tuners to become valid pair targets for Synchro Emergency, which significantly increases consistency within the engine itself. This lets us stay flexible with our non-engine cards without ruining the overall balance of the deck. He's also not essential for the speeder combo. If we draw him, it's not really worse than drawing something like Jet Synchron in older builds. That said, I'm still not 100% satisfied with this approach. But for now, it feels like the least bad option available. For the non-engine, we are running 5 Charmis, but thanks to Wheel Synchron, we are much more flexible in this slot. This means we can easily adjust these cards depending on the current meta and matchups. We also run Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, mainly to strengthen our turn 1 plays, since the deck still doesn't handle Fuwalos particularly well. Droll and Lockbird is a staple, and it has the added benefit of being pairable with Synchro Emergency if it ends up being dead in hand. Finally, we have Called by the Grave and Crossout Designator. These are mainly included as protection against Fuwalos, but to be honest, Crossout Designator is definitely cuttable depending on your preference or the meta. This covers the essentials of the main deck, so let's move on to the extra deck. We still have Starham in here because we respect Droll and Lockbird, and he comes up whenever we need to fix awkward lines. He can revive his materials and treat them as tuners, and he can also bring himself back. Most of the time, he's paired with Excel Synchron, which also helps us in weaker starter scenarios so we don't just lose to Nibiru, the primal being. Scrap Warrior is an engine requirement and basically the synchro half of Xaylan setups. In most combos, he searches Synchro Fellows, which then leads us into Stardust Synchron either directly or through Assault Sonic Warrior to access Xaylan. Junk Speeder doesn't need an introduction, it's still the most infamous card in the deck. We are running 2 cards to improve our going second quality. The first one is Silvera. On summon she flips all the monsters the opponent controls. She can of course be paired with Synchro Emergency and is good against basically every deck but fusion-based decks. The other going second card that is also a target for Synchro Emergency is Black Rose Dragon. Black Rose nukes the entire board on summon. We run 2 targets here to have more flexibility, but it's okay to drop 1 to make room in the extra deck. As mentioned before, Xaylan is our main protection tool for Speeder. If a card responds to another effect, Xaylan can chain and negate either the first or the second effect, which makes it incredibly strong for forcing plays through. Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon is kind of on his own now. We just can't afford to run the OG pairing anymore, and his unaffected effect rarely comes up since we don't access him early enough pre-Speeder, and post-Speeder it usually doesn't matter. Next up is Packbit, which is my favorite for Drawless Harmonia target. He's super flexible, he can act as 2 level 8 non-tuner bodies, or as disruption. During the opponent's turn, we can summon him, send him with signal, and push one of the opponent's cards into the back row. Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon gives us a second layer of protection for Speeder, especially in weaker starter lines where we can't always access Xaylan. Bestial Dissipator is one of the most flexible cards in the deck, he's both disruption and extension, and he's also our level 10 bridge for Crimson Dragon plays. Majestic Star Dragon is our main boss monster. It's an Omni-Negate that can wipe the opponent's entire field when it negates something. Since it tributes itself a cost, we can easily bring it back with Assault Synchron, meaning even if it gets stopped, we can access it again. It's also a target for Junk Signal, letting us use its effect multiple times in one turn, which most decks simply can't play through. Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl is the reason our end board becomes so hard to break. It revives all our used Synchro Dragons, meaning we can freely use Xaylan, Crystal Wing, and Dissipator as materials and still get them back. Crimson Dragon itself gives us access to our unfair boss monsters. You can also choose to run Cosmic Blazer Dragon if you prefer saving the tag out for the opponent's turn, it really comes down to personal preference. The last card I've really grown to like is Red Hypernova Dragon. He's a potential answer to Fuwalos. His summoning requirement is tough, but definitely doable. Some 2-card combos can even get him out while only giving the opponent 1 draw. He's non-targetable, indestructible, and can banish the entire field and graveyard. On top of that, he can be revived with Assault Synchron or Dissipator, making follow-up and lethal pushes much easier. So what's my overall take on Synchrons in the meta? It's still not enough to be truly tiered, but we're in a very solid spot. I'd confidently call the deck high rogue. It's consistent, resilient, and absolutely capable of topping or even winning events if piloted well. We now have solid going second plays, access to some of the strongest hand traps in the format, and much better protection overall. That said, the deck still has its issues. Some hands can feel awkward because, at the end of the day, a lot of Synchron names are still bad names. They extend, but they're not always high quality on their own. Still, I'm honestly really satisfied with the support. The deck finally has its own identity, instead of just being a pile of combo pieces. So with that said, let's get into the combo section. We're starting with Junk Meister, our best starter. He doesn't lose to Droll and Lockbird or Nibiru, the primal being, and he's super easy to extend from. What makes him really strong is his flexibility. Depending on the situation, you can search Junk Signal instead of Junk Armor, especially going second. Our goal here is simple. We want Junk Signal and Zaylin online before we commit to Junk Speeder. Once that's set up, we go into Speeder and summon all remaining Synchrons from the deck. In this line, we're also using Wheel Synchron. He doesn't change the end board too much, but he gives us an extra layer with Packbit in the back row. After Speeder resolves, we go into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon to clear space while keeping protection against Nibiru. From there, we transition into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, revive Assault Synchron, and go into Bestial Dispater. We use Star Junk Synchron self-banish effect so Dispater can bring him back, which lets us access Packbit and then move into Crimson Dragon. If we have a dead card, we can convert it into an extra Packbit, but it's not required. To finish the combo, we reduce Crimson Dragon's level with Wheel Synchron, tribute Dispater for Stardust Synchron, and go into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl to revive everything. We pass on that board, and during the opponent's turn, Crimson Dragon tags into Majestic Star Dragon. If you don't have that, you can go into Cosmic Blazer Dragon instead, both are completely fine. We're transitioning into our next strong starter, Emergency Teleport. We activate it in the draw phase to play around Droll and Lockbird, so we can still generate value even if we get hit. If the opponent does have Droll, we take a different route, but for that, check out my and Synchrons Beat Short series. For now, we're focusing on the clean, uninterrupted line. Just like before, our goal is to establish Zaylin and Junk Signal before committing to Junk Speeder. We achieve this through the usual setup with Stardust Synchron and Scrap Warrior, but this time we make one key adjustment. Before going into Speeder, we summon Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon to clean up our board and stabilize the field. Then we use Synchro Fellows in the grave to gain an additional normal summon. We normal summon Junk Synchron, revive Assault Sonic Warrior, and go into Speeder. Once Speeder resolves, the line becomes very similar to the Meister combo, with one important difference. Since we already have Crystal Wing on the field, we don't need to use Assault Synchron to make it. Instead, we go straight into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon and revive a level 1 tuner. From there, we summon Bestial Dispater, and use Star Junk Synchron's Graveyard effect so Dispater can bring him back. This gives us access to Packbit, and then we transition into Crimson Dragon. Because we already have a tuner on the field, we only need to reduce Crimson Dragon's level by 1 to go into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl, revive everything, and finish the combo. We end on the exact same board as the Junk Meister line. Now let's take a look at what happens if we hard draw Psi-Reflector. The line changes quite a bit and becomes a bit less smooth towards the end, but it's still very solid. It doesn't lose to Droll and Lockbird. We start with a normal summon of Psi-Reflector, which gets us Assault Sonic Warrior and gives us access to Scrap Warrior. Scrap Warrior then searches Synchro Fellows, and Fellows grab Stardust Synchron and Junk Synchron. Since we already used our normal summon, and we're not in a bestial meta, we discard Stardust Synchron for the effect of Fellows. We activate Stardust Synchron in the grave, tribute Psi-Reflector, and search Junk Signal, which lets us transition into our Zaylin setup. Then we activate Fellows in the grave for the additional normal summon, summon Junk Synchron, and go into Junk Speeder. After Speeder resolves, we follow a familiar path and go straight into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. From here, it's the usual progression. Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon into Bestial Dispater. The key difference in this line is that we bring back the banished Stardust Synchron with Dispater. We then reduce Dispater's level by 2 and go into Crimson Dragon, and from there into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl using the second Stardust Synchron and Crystal Wing. This part of the line is a bit awkward, and not my favorite, but it still gets the job done. One important note. If the opponent drops Nibiru here and we've already used Junk Signal, we need to bounce back Crimson Dragon to stop the play. Even then, we're still in a solid position and can recover from it. Next up is the Full Speed Warrior line. In terms of sequencing, it's very similar to the Psi-Reflector line, but slightly worse overall, mainly because it's not good into Droll and Lock Bird. We have to normal summon Full Speed Warrior, and he searches Synchro Fellows. If the opponent drops Droll here, the line unfortunately just ends. But if they don't, we continue. We use Fellows to search Scrap Synchron and Junk Synchron, then go into Scrap Warrior to access Assault Sonic Warrior, which grabs Stardust Synchron. Since we don't have a leftover normal summon, we tribute Assault Sonic Warrior for Stardust Synchron, search Junk Signal, and transition into our Zalan setup. From here, the line basically mirrors the Psi-Reflector route. We banish Fellows for the additional normal summon Junk Synchron, and go into Junk Speeder. After Speeder resolves, we go into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, then into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, revive Assault Synchron, and summon Bestial Dissipator. Dissipator brings back the banished Stardust Synchron, and we reduce Dissipator's level to go into Crimson Dragon. From there, we transition into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl. Just like in the Psi-Reflector line, we run into a slightly awkward spot here, but we still end on a very similar board. Next up is the Assault Sonic Warrior line. Synchro Fellows follows almost the exact same route, just with a slightly different entry point. We start by normal summoning Assault Sonic Warrior, searching Scrap Synchron, and going into Scrap Warrior to access Synchro Fellows. Fellows then grabs Junk Synchron and Star Junk Synchron. If we start with Fellows instead, we end up in the same position. Scrap Warrior just searches Star Junk for us. We activate Fellows in the grave for the additional normal summon. From here, we can either normal summon Junk Synchron or use Star Junk Synchron, it doesn't matter too much. Our goal is to get into Excel Synchron, send Stardust Synchron to the grave, and then transition into Star Ham. Star Ham revives Excel Synchron and sets up our next step. At this point, I go into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. It is possible to tribute for Stardust Synchron and establish Zalan plus Junk Signal before Junk Speeder, but that line becomes more scuffed unless you add extra bricks, so I prefer this route. After Speeder resolves, we have two different paths depending on what we're playing around. In this example, we assume we're not worried about board breakers, since we don't have access to Junk Signal at the end of our turn, which is our main protection. We tribute for Wheel Synchron and immediately use its level manipulation to access Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, revive Assault Synchron, and go into Bestial Dissipator. We then use Junk Signal on Dissipator to trigger Assault Synchron, bringing back Excel Stardust and smoothly transitioning into Crimson Dragon, and finally Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl. Originally, I didn't plan to show this Synchro Fellows line, since it's almost identical to the Assault Sonic Warrior route. But this version is important because it shows how we can still access Junk Signal for follow-up. Up until Zalan, the line plays out very similarly. The key difference comes afterwards. Instead of going into Bestial Dissipator first and using Junk Signal later, we use Signal earlier on Wheel Synchron. This lets us summon Full Speed Warrior, which then searches Junk Signal, giving us follow-up for the opponent's turn. From there, we continue into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, revive Assault Synchron, and then go into Dissipator. we tribute Dispater with Stardust Synchron to trigger Assault Synchron, bringing Dispater back onto the field. Dispater then revives Assault Synchron, which allows us to transition into Crimson Dragon, and finally into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl. The downside of this line is that it's more vulnerable at the end. If the opponent disrupts Quetzalcoatl, we don't have Junk Signal as protection. And if that disruption is a monster effect, we may have to sacrifice Crimson Dragon just to stabilize the board. Let's get into our last combo for today. To keep things simple, I've grouped all the Junk Signal lines into one, since Junk Armor and Stardust Synchron basically follow the same logic as starters. For this example, I'm showing the worst version of the line. Just like the Fellows and Assault Sonic Warrior routes, our first goal is to get into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon so we don't lose to Nibiru, the primal being. We follow a similar sequencing with Junk Synchron and Star Junk Synchron to get there. Once we reach Crystal Wing, we summon the remaining Junk monsters in hand to revive a level 1 tuner from the grave. This smooths out the combo a lot, and we're able to do this because we already have a level 2 tuner on the field to pair for Junk Speeder. After Speeder resolves, we go into Zaylan, and then directly into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon to revive Assault Synchron. From there, we summon Bestial Dispater, and activate Star Junk Synchron in the grave so Dispater can bring him back. This gives us access to Packbit, adding another layer of interaction. If we have a dead card in hand, we can convert it into an additional Packbit setup, but again, it's optional. To finish the combo, we use Will Synchron in the grave to reduce Crimson Dragon's level to 8, tribute Dispater for Stardust Synchron, and go into Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl to complete the board. That's basically it for the combo section, and unlike my other TCG videos, I'll also show you some replays this time. As a final word for today, all the weaker lines are noticeably improved by Jet Synchron, especially if you want to go for the shooting Majestic Dragon approach, which, honestly, is still my favorite way to play the deck in terms of gameplay feel. But for this guide, I wanted to keep things grounded and show a minimal brick foundation, so you can experiment and branch into different directions yourself. I'm also not fully settled on what the actual optimal Synchron build is right now. There are just too many viable routes with different strengths and weaknesses, including even some FTK-focused variants. I also wanted to show a slightly different build philosophy compared to my last TCG Synchron version. So for once, I'll stop the yapping here and let you enjoy the replays. Big shout out to Frost Drakony and Hazama from the Emir Phoenix's Discord server for helping me gather some solid replay material. Hazama also runs a YouTube channel where you can find some really nice Raid Raptor content, definitely worth checking out. Stay tuned after the replays, because I'll also show 2 example lines with Wheel Synchron in hand, just to demonstrate that it's not required to summon him off Speeder at all.